Alright, I'm gonna start the recording right here. Look how fast the game launches. Right. So I started up 3 new worlds. I was intent on rolling 3 seeds, but the third seed was already so good I just decided I'm not gonna bother with rolling the other two. I'm gonna show them off one by one and then we'll start the Let's Play proper. For this world, I'm going to keep my expectations low. The goals are to keep my expectations low and to have very low standards until I beat the Ender Dragon. I'm going to dedicate every resource I have into just efficiently beating the Ender Dragon. So I can get the Elytra where the game really begins, as a lot of people like to say. As I like to say, your RPG isn't good unless it doesn't begin, unless it doesn't really begin after the post game. When post game begins, wording is difficult, but I hope you guys get what I mean. What's this? Ah, I have dark mode installed now as a mod. This was part of Better Minecraft mod pack by default, but I didn't install it because it didn't work with Optifine. But I don't have to worry about Optifine anymore. Again, why was I such an apologist? Oh, there's another thing I can dark mode actually, which is and that's the Mojang title screen. But where is it? I think it's in accessibility, which is really weird. Enhances the contrast of UI elements. Weird. Yeah. Next time it. Alright, so let's go through them one at a time. The first world was decently acceptable, but I didn't like it. The second one was better, but Millilicious is the one I'm staying with. Checking the recording real quick while the game is loading. Oh, holy crap. Why is this so much better? Why are Minecraft devs? Bedrock Edition, I'm pretty sure runs better. Well, to be fair, I am running modded Minecraft, and Minecraft already runs well enough for me in vanilla. So, it's a little unfair, I suppose. I fucked it up. It's a song everyone knows, but no one actually knows the name of. Right, like I said, I forgot to generate structure bonus the bonus chest. So this one starts me off in a taiga village, and there's just a lot of taiga, which isn't bad. But with this village being the only real landmark I have to start off with, it's not a good starting point for me. It's nice and pretty, and I can definitely work with it, but I want a better start. I'm impatient, damn it. Whoops. It is pretty funny how it generated on a body of water and the entire generation just had to adapt to it. Funny thing about all the three worlds I generated, but I actually started. I guess it does have this blacksmith thingy with some armor stands with armor in them. So I get to start off with armor immediately, which is pretty fun, I suppose. They also generated right next to this portal. I don't see any treasure chest for it, which is kinda lame. And it's a Pierce Fire Tick. Spread Fire Tick is finally doing its thing. Weird. But yeah, I started on top of a tree for all of them, and I literally had to take fall damage. There was no other way around it. Oh, ribs. Right, let's just go in creative mode and see what I'm missing out by skipping out on this world. I doubt it's much. It's a lot of generation I'm already familiar with. By this point, with how many new worlds I've started. This looks like a dungeon. No, it looks like a... what do you call it? A blacksmith. The classic blacksmith. The one with obsidian blocks and stuff. And it's abandoned. This appears to be an entire abandoned village of some kind. But there's no zombies. I've never seen a zombie village generate before. And I still haven't. It's nice. It's a little cold, which means a jungle biome will be very far away, most likely. Oh, look at that house. Hey, it's another one of these towers. These are really useful. They contain some good loot. Should I have decided to try finding it? Seeking it out? Well, it has diamonds, so it's really good. Yeah, dang. No, god dang it. Are these structures have diamonds in them? That's wacky. this is a really good tower. And it's not that far away from spawn. Yeah, so I spawned around here on top of one of the trees, which is really funny for me. Let's head north. I think there's another village over there. I want to see it. I keep forgetting you can sprint while flying in creative mode. And I should probably just go to spectator mode instead. Since there you can use the scroll wheel to alter your speed. You can go really fast. Those leads. Another structure hinting at the golem I could create. That's what that was. Oh no, the village I'm wanting is still further up. Just past the bridge. Or river, rather. It is a village. Another caravan. So I guess they spawn in places other than deserts. Talk about another terrible spot. Pollutioner? I don't think this is a friendly place. Oh, it definitely is not. He doesn't take very good care of his place now, does he? Where's the villager? What are they doing to him? And what's with this lag? have pitch black. I have a new mod that does pitch black. So that's very cool and epic. Let me lower my render distance. Or maybe just the simulation distance. Cool. Alright, let's bring a torch.
Hey everyone, so given my recent debunking activity, I get lots of requests for topics to cover, and the one I get the most is vaccines. Now, unlike the obscure hoaxes I normally debunk, vaccines are something that the entire population interfaces with and has an opinion about. These opinions vary due to differing levels of education as well as exposure to misinformation, which ranges from insane lies to more subtle propaganda. So in putting this together, I wanted to address as many of the false talking points that are floating around as humanly possible, in the hopes that any vaccine skeptics who may be watching will be able to briefly suspend their convictions and listen to the other side. Now, I know that the COVID vaccine is on the forefront of everyone's mind, and I will get to that towards the end, but I wanted to approach this in a more general way, so I'm going to start out by briefly explaining what vaccines are and how they work. This may be review for most, but we need to do this for context. Then I will address every bit of misinformation I have ever heard about vaccines. And finally, I'll wrap things up with the new COVID vaccines and some common concerns about them. Hopefully everyone will learn something new and perhaps forget some lies as well. So let's get started. What are vaccines? Well, I cover the history of their development in some detail over in my History of Drugs series, so for the full story, head over there. But for those in a hurry, I will summarize as quickly as possible. Throughout all of human history, the most common cause of death has always been infectious pathogens, which means a microorganism that can cause disease. The Black Death, which wiped out half of Europe in the 15th century, was caused by Yersinia pestis, a species of bacterium. Even bigger killers, by pure numbers at least, have been tuberculosis, also caused by a bacterium, smallpox, caused by a virus, and dozens of other horrifically deadly diseases that are now either non-existent or easily treatable. For the longest time, we had no clue what caused these diseases, as we couldn't see these organisms. Our incantations and primitive medical techniques had no effect, and we were totally helpless against them, apart from the faculties of the immune system we all possess. So how does the immune system deal with pathogens? Well, this is immensely complicated, and I have just begun an immunology series which will cover all aspects of the immune system in significant detail. But again, to summarize the basics as briefly as possible, once something like a virus infects host cells, some of its surface proteins are recognized as foreign by immune cells, and in response to these foreign markers, called antigens, the immune system produces other proteins called antibodies. These are able to recognize that specific antigen and bind to it, tagging it for destruction by other immune cells that eat up invaders. Once these antibodies have formed, they stick around as long as the invaders are still active, and then slowly disappear from circulation. But there are also specialized cells called memory cells that can remember how to generate that specific antibody, sometimes for several decades, such that if the invader infects again at a later time, the immune system can mount a much faster response to the antigen and eradicate it before significant infection occurs. This is why most infectious agents render a person immune from successive infections, if the immune system reacts quickly enough to the first attack and the person recovers, which obviously is not always the case. Now, before we had any clue about the immune system, we had already recognized immunity as a concept, since we were able to see that people usually didn't get infected by the same thing twice. That's why crude forms of immunization have been practiced for over 1,000 years, like a technique called variolation, which was used to fight smallpox, in which people were deliberately exposed to someone else's smallpox scabs through a cut in the skin or inhaling up the nose. But this was really just infecting oneself with smallpox, and it was a risky procedure with a significant mortality rate. Then, in the 18th century, a man named Edward Jenner innovated this approach. He used a slight variant of the smallpox virus called the cowpox virus, which was not as dangerous, and exposed patients to that instead, finding that it bestowed them with immunity against smallpox as well. He had no idea what viruses even were, let alone that this worked because of the structural similarity of the two viruses, which caused antibodies to be generated that would recognize both viruses, thus priming the immune system for smallpox infection without having to be infected with smallpox. But even without this knowledge, the new vaccination technique worked wonderfully with a substantially lower risk of mortality, and it was soon adopted worldwide, eventually leading to the complete eradication of smallpox by 1980. So with this earliest example, we can see the basic mechanism by which all vaccines operate. Over time, the approach was refined, but the core principle was always the same. Expose the immune system to some particle. This could be a weaker analog of a deadly virus. It could be an attenuated version of the virus, meaning that it is modified so that it has difficulty infecting and replicating within cells. It could even be just the isolated surface protein that the virus uses to gain entry to cells. Once any of these things enter the bloodstream, the immune system goes through the slow process of the primary immune response, and then if that pathogen is ever truly encountered, the body is already prepared to destroy it immediately via antibodies and the secondary immune response, doing so before infection can even occur.
So
obviously,
this
was the ultra-condensed explanation, and with some knowledge of biochemistry and microbiology, we could talk for 1,000 hours about what we just said. But at its essence, that's what vaccines do. And this is no small feat. The average life expectancy across the world was only around 30, all the way until the turn of the 20th century. The main factor in this figure more than doubling in less than a century is our recent ability to prevent infection with vaccines and eradicate pathogens with modern drugs. Okay, so with that out of the way, what are some of the talking points that are brought up against vaccines and their use? Well, let's start with the most absurd narrative I've heard, and from a scientific standpoint, that would be outright denial that pathogens like viruses even exist at all. That's right, some people say that infectious microorganisms are not real. This is astounding. We've been able to see bacteria in microscopes since the 17th century, and we've been looking at viruses in electron microscopes since the early 20th century. There are tens of thousands of people all over the world whose job it is to study these things. They're called microbiologists and virologists, and the things they study do exist. A slight modification of this view is that viruses exist, but they don't cause disease. Again, this is complete nonsense. We observe them. We culture them, which means allowing them to infect cells and multiply. We study in great detail the precise mechanisms by which they gain access to a cell and force that cell to express the viral genome. We have sequenced the genomes of all the viruses we study. We know what protein each gene codes for and what each protein does. We deliberately allow things called retroviruses to infect cells to perform medical techniques like gene therapy. We know what viruses are and how they work. The most damaging pusher of this lie as of late has been a psychiatrist turned naturopath named Andrew Kaufman. He is one of many personalities that has gained traction on YouTube by peddling blatant lies of an absurd nature, like that appendicitis is actually constipation. He maintains that the coronavirus which causes COVID does not exist, nor do the viruses that cause AIDS, hepatitis, measles, and other viral diseases. He claims that what scientists are observing are actually exosomes, or tiny vesicles injected from a cell that are of human origin and contain human DNA. There is nothing to even discuss here. That is wrong. COVID is caused by a novel coronavirus. Some say it has never been isolated. That's wrong. It's trivial to isolate and has been done countless times. Its genome has been sequenced, which again is trivial. Some like to say that viruses don't exist because they don't fulfill Koch's postulates. Well, Robert Koch didn't know that viruses exist, and his postulates don't apply universally. They've been obsolete for over a century.
Enough of
Even
that world.
Koch
Let's see what
himself
the other ones have
recognized
to offer.
that not everyone who carried bacterial
one's
infections
never
like
gonna-
typhoid fever or cholera exhibited symptoms, so there were immediate caveats to his postulates, and they are now known to be essentially irrelevant in comparison with modern sequencing techniques. Without diving into the particulars of microbiology, people who bring up Koch's postulates to discredit the existence of viruses do not know what those postulates are and are just regurgitating a lie they heard on the internet. It can't be made clearer that Kaufman has zero knowledge of microbiology and is just another con man cashing in on the anti-science alt-health craze. For a multitude of psychological and sociological reasons, a huge portion of the population responds favorably to literally any narrative which states that science and Western medicine are wrong. It doesn't matter who is saying it or what their qualifications are. It doesn't matter what their motives are or what they're selling, which, by the way, for Kaufman is outrageously expensive natural health consultations and an assortment of bogus products plastered all over his website. A certain demographic of people will eat up any narrative of this variety like candy because it satiates their anti-establishment bias. I won't go too far with this because it deserves a whole video unto itself, but Kaufman and all others in his camp are objectively wrong. Viruses exist and they cause disease. Denying the germ theory of disease is like denying the existence of gravity or claiming the earth is flat. It deserves nothing but mockery. Moving up the ladder, we leave the realm of outright denial of reality to chemophobia. There are many people who understand that pathogens exist and do cause disease, and that vaccines do work in preventing diseases. But they take issue with what's inside the vaccine. To them, it's a soup of nasty chemicals that Big Pharma has concocted, either intending deliberate harm or merely indifferent to its harmful properties. This sentiment is called vaccine hesitancy, and it has a long history, so I want to spend some time here. Now, although there are many talking points to address, the modern anti-vaccine movement received a huge boost due to a British physician named Andrew Wakefield. In the 1990s, many parents with children who had developed autism-related syndromes felt that a vaccine was responsible. There was, of course, no real basis for this. It was just a gut feeling from scientifically uneducated people looking for something to blame. But the narrative picked up steam, and it attracted a number of personal injury lawyers who began circling like sharks, ready to exploit the fury and make some money. A lawyer named Richard Barr knew he could cash in if he could get someone qualified to provide some evidence for this link, so he found a gastroenterologist who had already published something on this hypothesis, Wakefield, and paid him about £500,000 to produce a study that would give him the green light to sue. Wakefield got to work, and in 1998 he published a study in The Lancet claiming that the MMR vaccine, which inoculates against measles, mumps, and rubella, is linked to a number of gastric disorders and autism. Immediately after publication, he called a press conference suggesting that instead of inoculating against all three at once, a series of separate vaccines should be adopted, including one for measles, which he had conveniently filed a patent for and neglected to disclose. But much more importantly, the study itself was completely fraudulent. It had only 12 subjects, making it statistically meaningless. And furthermore, all 12 children involved in the study were clients of Richard Barr, some of whom were known to be autistic prior to receiving the MMR vaccine. Wakefield also heavily manipulated all of the data. So essentially, the law firm funded the research with the intended results in mind, paid Wakefield to do it, and then paid off a handful of other researchers in the US and UK to support the findings. Other studies were never able to replicate the results of Wakefield's study, and even proved conclusively that there is no link between the MMR vaccine and autism. So the fraudulent study was later retracted, but it was too late. Barr and Wakefield had already initiated a media frenzy, which was perpetuated by a handful of incompetent celebrities, and the damage had been done, with a resurgence of measles outbreaks that led to a number of deaths. There was eventually some justice, as years later an investigative journalist named Brian Deere wrote up a story in the British Medical Journal outlining what I've just told you in much more detail, exposing the scam from top to bottom. Wakefield sued the journal and Deere himself, but the lawsuits were dismissed, and he was disbarred from the British Society of Medicine.
I
With no
started
more
somewhere
professional
around
life left
here.
in Britain, he moved to the
There's
US
not really
and
much
became the hero of
insight
the
for a
American
village, but it is still a
anti-vaccine
workable
movement, treated
world
as a
since
martyr instead of the
there's plenty of
detestable
life
villain he
to
truly
find.
is. He now lives a lavish lifestyle with his girlfriend, former supermodel Elle Macpherson, giving high-priced talks on expensive cruises to gullible rich people. He is also responsible for the pseudo-documentary Vaxxed, in which he doubles down on all the fraudulent science surrounding the MMR
Wow,
vaccine.
there's a lot of
But this time
pillagers
aimed at
nearby
suggestible
though,
lay people, amounting
which is
to
not
blatant
good.
propaganda to fuel his cash cow. Wakefield is a con man, plain and simple. So that's the short and sweet version of the whole vaccines autism link and how the myth got started. Vaccines do not cause autism. Full stop, period. But what exactly is in vaccines, and can anything in them cause some other kind of harm? Let's talk about specific ingredients and what people say about them. First, most anti-vaxxers talk about mercury. This is because of a compound called thimerosal, which was sometimes used as a preservative in vaccines, meaning a substance that prevents contamination. Thimerosal has a mercury atom in it, and this is often cited in the context of the autism link. This lie preys on ignorance towards basic principles of chemistry. Elemental mercury is rather toxic due to its ability to inhibit important enzymes. This does not apply equally to every molecule that simply contains a mercury atom. These are very different things. Molecules that contain one or more atoms of a particular element do not behave like that element in isolated form. Otherwise, one would presume that any carbon-containing compound, like, say, sugar, must be a diamond. Toxicity is complex and impossible to understand without discussing how molecules interact with proteins in the body. Simply looking at which elements are present in a molecule tells you nothing whatsoever about what that molecule will do. Most organic compounds are made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Those four elements, plus a couple others, combine in different ways to make up most of what's in your body and most of what you eat. They also make up the most toxic compounds in
It's
existence.
just not in the
The
signature
single
dark
most
oak.
toxic compound known
No, the
is the
interior has a lot of dark
botulinum
oak.
which is a naturally occurring
They have
protein
LA.
produced by the bacterial
They have
species
honey block
Clostridium
tables for some
botulinum,
reason.
with a gram of it being enough to kill 10 million
They have
people.
like a wine
And as it
barrel.
is a protein, it is made of the same elements
It has
as
sugar
literally
inside
every
it, which
other
is
protein.
funny.
Consider an even simpler example. Sodium is a highly combustible metal that ignites spontaneously when exposed to moisture and causes severe irritation upon contact with the skin. Chlorine is a yellow toxic gas that was used as a chemical weapon in World War I. Put them together and what do you
Fireball.
get? Sodium
What
chloride.
the heck is a fireball?
Identifying the elements present in a compound does
Can
not
I
tell
burn
you
this
what
place
it
down to the ground with
Those
it?
who do not understand
I
basic
sure can.
chemical principles like this are therefore easy to scare. Propagandists will say of thimerosal, hey, there's mercury in this, and mercury is toxic, so this is toxic. Well, there isn't elemental mercury in there, just like there isn't oxygen gas or diamonds. It's a compound with a mercury atom in it, and in the small amount present in any vaccines, it is
explosive.
harmless. Countless
It's a
studies have
grenade.
confirmed this. Some will compare it not to elemental mercury, but methyl mercury, which can be dangerous in large doses, and is the source of mercury poisoning from seafood. Thimerosal does produce some ethyl mercury in solution, but the toxicity of ethyl mercury is nowhere near that of methyl mercury or elemental mercury. It is cleared from the body much more rapidly, and at the concentrations that had been present in vaccines, it was completely negligible. We must be aware that literally everything is toxic in high enough dosage, so to discuss toxicity without talking about concentration is totally misguided, particularly when humans are exposed to comparable amounts of mercury in breast milk, formula, and common foods we all eat. Since the Wakefield incident,
what foods have
dozens of
mercury
studies
in
have
them?
been
I'd like to
performed by
know.
a multitude of reputable
Does
institutions
rice have mercury?
comprised of millions of children.
I wonder
In
how
stark
many
contrast
rice
to
it would take for
Wakefield's
you to
12,
die of
all
mercury
failing to
poisoning.
establish any correlation
Assuming you
between
don't die
autism
of
and thimerosal,
overconsumption of
MMR
rice
vaccine
first,
in
of
general.
course.
Despite all this, thimerosal has since been removed from most vaccines, largely due to a switch towards single-dose vials that do not require preservatives, but also partially to comply with the public frenzy. As has been the case for quite some time by now, all vaccines routinely used on children below the age of 6 in the U.S. do not contain thimerosal. Not surprisingly, there has been no change in the frequency of autism diagnoses as a result, and there is no difference in prevalence of autism amongst immunized and unimmunized because there is no link.
This one starts
The
me
rise
off in
in
an
autism
awesome
cases
place,
since
which
the
is pretty
1980s
cool.
is simply
I'm
due
not
to
going
an
to
increased
creative mode
attentiveness
this time.
and
There's a village
capacity
nearby
to
that I haven't
diagnose
gone to it
autism
yet.
in the first place, whereas prior to that time, autistic individuals were just
And more
regarded as
importantly,
weird.
this structure is
Autism does
just...
not in any way resemble symptoms
We
of
already
mercury
know this
poisoning.
place has a lot
It
of
is
good...
primarily
That structure
genetic in
has a lot
nature,
of good
and
stuff on it.
vaccines don't cause it. End of story. Now, of course, it doesn't end with thimerosal. What else is in there? Well, according to some, there is aborted
First things
fetal
first,
tissue
though.
in vaccines. This
You
is
need to
ridiculous.
survive the first
There has
night.
never, ever been any vaccine with aborted fetal tissue as an ingredient. Some vaccines require growing a particular virus in a human cell culture, and these cultures came from two legally aborted fetuses in the 1960s, whose stem cells can be utilized indefinitely. This is how the viral particles for the vaccine are grown, which are then purified to remove cellular debris and growth agents. The vaccine literally contained aborted fetal tissue. The only reason anti-vaccine propagandists say this is because their side door into your trust involves triggering fear and outrage, and lots of people who are susceptible to their lies are also anti-abortion. It's just another button for them to push to get you angry enough to buy what they're selling you. Then comes the variety of other substances that are cited in outrage. A big one is aluminum. Aluminum is the most common metal in nature. It's in the ground, in the air, in the water, in your food, as well as in breast milk and baby formula, so it's in babies too. Aluminum salts are present in certain vaccines as adjuvants, meaning something that improves the resulting immune response, but complaints regarding toxicity are oblivious to one indispensable fact, which is that the dose makes the poison. Again, it is not the case that some substances are toxic and others are not. Literally everything is harmful in high enough dosage. There is an amount of water that if you drink it, you will die. Not drown, mind you. Water intoxication, disruption. Without oxygen, we die in minutes, but breathing pure oxygen for a couple hours will kill
Stack
you.
is good for now.
Any substance can kill you. The key is how much it takes to kill you. And even things that are on the more toxic side, discussing them without citing amounts is pointless. Chemicals that are known to be significantly toxic are still everywhere. Metals like lead, cadmium, thallium, there's some of each in your body at all times, even in the bloodstream. Compounds like formaldehyde are present naturally in dozens of fruits and vegetables in quantities that would surprise most people. Our bodies are constantly coming into contact with these substances, just in amounts that are extremely tolerable and manageable. So when people worry about aluminum in vaccines without asking how much is in them, they are not understanding the concept of toxicity. The amount of aluminum in a vaccine is so negligible that it does not even measurably raise the levels of aluminum that are already present in any child. There is many times more aluminum in an antacid tablet than in a vaccine. It's nowhere near enough to be harmful, period. The general public needs to get over the idea of bad chemicals and good chemicals. Anything can kill you if you ingest too much, and even the most toxic substances in the world have a threshold below which they will do no harm. The dose makes the poison. Moving on, it would be unfair to skip over the handful of incidents in which vaccine technology was mishandled in unfortunate ways. For example, the forced polio immunization campaign of 1955 resulted in some children accidentally being given the live virus, meaning not attenuated enough, so it just gave them polio. Then there was the swine flu vaccine of 1976, from which 1 in 100,000 developed something called Guillain-Barré syndrome.
I wonder if there's any
These are bad things
librarians
that did happen, which have fueled vaccine hesitancy with some justification. But vaccines have come a long way over the decades, with smaller antigenic loads.
Why are there
and better
doors
studies
inside?
and
That really
techniques being
bugs
done.
me.
So,
I
apart
prefer
from
my
such
doors
isolated
outside.
incidents, the only generalized anti-vaccine talking points that are even remotely reasonable are the ones regarding adverse reactions and vaccine injuries. There is a risk of anaphylactic shock in people with a history of sensitivity, so there can be mild to moderate consequences for around 1 in every 53,000 people, though they can be screened for such that those with contraindications can know which vaccines to avoid, and vaccine recipients are monitored
Yeah, sure.
in case an adverse reaction occurs. Also, in general, the negative ramifications of vaccine injuries
You're
are
a librarian.
dramatically outweighed by
I'm
the
a potion maker,
immeasurable
so what do you...
benefit of totally eradicating pathogens that have killed
Heck, it's a
millions
cloth
or
of
even
purification.
billions of people. If the enormous number of deaths due to automobile accidents that occur every year doesn't cause us to discontinue driving cars, then the comparatively negligible number of adverse vaccine reactions certainly should not be considered a reason not to vaccinate. And finally, since it's on everyone's mind, let's run down a short list of the most frequent talking points regarding the COVID vaccines. As most have heard, the Pfizer and Moderna COVID vaccines are mRNA vaccines, and they are the first of their kind. As such, many people are worried about what they view as brand new experimental technology. This is not the case. Moderna has been working on this technology for over a decade.
Well, I didn't like that sound.
To RNA.
Anyway.
The company formed specifically to develop mRNA technology, including vaccines. That's why they beat dozens of other companies to the punch. Scientists have been working on this for a while, so the pertinent research had already been done. Once the novel coronavirus genome was sequenced, the vaccine was developed immediately. Still, people speculate about the vaccine altering our DNA. This is physically impossible. The way things work inside our cells is that DNA acts as a template for enzymes to build mRNA during a process called transcription, which then serves
You
as
guys
a
just
template
live with
for
that
a ribosome
crocodile?
to build a protein during a process called translation. Check out my biochemistry and biology tutorials if you want more
It's
details
trying to
on this
eat me.
process, but that's the quick version. The mRNA in the vaccine acts as a template for
I
our
want this
cells
guy to
to
be level
build the
2.
viral spike protein that
I wanna see if
behaves
I can
as
buy a
an
bow.
antigen, which our immune cells can then interact with to build the antibodies. Then the mRNA gets degraded, and with
You're
all
darn
of the other
tootin'.
mRNA molecules our cells produce every
No
day.
arrows, though.
That's how the vaccine works, and that's why
I
this
don't think
approach
that
is
was a
proven.
good use of my
Any
time.
risk associated
Oh
with
my.
using an
Oh
attenuated
my.
virus is
Oh
gone,
no!
because there is no virus or viral particle being injected at all. It can't be stressed enough that there is no mechanism by which mRNA can produce DNA in the human body, nor implement DNA into the human genome. It is literally impossible. So if you hear someone say that the vaccine will change your DNA, they either have no idea what they're talking about, or they're lying, or both. It does not change your DNA. Next, there is a lot of concern regarding what some perceive as a rushed process. Again, while it was the fastest rollout of a vaccine in history, this still isn't accurate. When we say that the vaccine was
This is
fast-tracked,
bad.
we are saying that long regulatory periods were eliminated. Basically, all the bureaucratic hurdles and red tape which would normally delay vaccine development were removed, for obvious reasons.
Alright, so that village is in a
The
bad
clinical
spot,
trials
huh?
themselves were not abbreviated in any way. It is simply that Phase 2 was being planned while Phase 1 was underway, rather than waiting for approval to begin due to the state of emergency. The same going from Phase 2 to Phase 3. This is where huge chunks of time were saved. Clinical trials were completed. No one is a guinea pig. People getting the vaccine are not being experimented upon. They are just getting a vaccine. These vaccines were tested.
Man, why are
just as
crocodiles such a
rigorously
fucking
as any
menace?
other.
Oh
That
my
medical
god, why are
professionals
you
have
such a
been
menace?
unanimously getting this vaccine the moment it is made available to them should be everything you need to know regarding its safety, as they are best equipped to assess its safety, and they all get it. There have been many instances of large-scale emergency vaccinations in the past, such as the one in Yugoslavia in the 1970s in response to the last smallpox outbreak that ever occurred. The entire population of 18 million was rapidly vaccinated, and now we don't have smallpox anymore. To those too young to know what smallpox was, it really, really sucked. A lot. And its eradication is a candidate for the greatest scientific achievement of all time. Lastly, of course, there are the Orwellian overtones about microchips and Bill Gates and tracking software and new world orders and so on and so forth. It's really not worth getting into the weeds for every single flavor of this paranoia, so I'll just say one thing. Whatever plans you've heard for implantations delivering vaccines in the future, or tags, or microparticles, or mind control, this isn't it. It's just a vaccine. It doesn't reprogram your cells. It's just a piece of mRNA that codes for a viral spike protein. That's all. So if these other technologies arrive in the future, we can talk about it then. And if you're worried about being tracked based on vaccination status and you own an iPhone, it's too late. You're being tracked already. So as important as the discussion regarding the ethics surrounding technology and privacy may be, it has nothing to do with this vaccine. As society begins to get rolling again, having been vaccinated will be a
Right, I
requirement
can't stay
for
here
doing lots of
because
things.
there's
You can
crocodiles.
interpret that as manipulative or restrictive if you like, but
And
it's just
I
common
can't
sense.
kill them yet.
Whether it's through an app or whatever else, being able to prove you've been vaccinated is a way for businesses to safely open back up and get the economy going again, which is something those who have been complaining about lockdown should be rejoicing over. Even for those who insist that the low mortality rate makes it pointless for young people to vaccinate, there are plenty of young people who have died from COVID, and we still aren't fully aware of all the long-term effects of the infection. Combining all this with the responsibility of minimizing the risk of infecting others, there is not really any strong position against getting this vaccine. And in the meantime, while we're at it, for those who aren't yet vaccinated or refuse to vaccinate, please wear your masks. Anything you've heard about masks being ineffective or somehow dangerous is ridiculous. Medical professionals wear masks for a reason. They reduce pathogen transmission by 70%. Yes, the pores in the mask are larger than the size of a single virion, but the viruses are not all floating around in the air by their lonesome. They are transmitted primarily through aerosol droplets, which are little bits of water that leave your mouth when you talk or even just breathe. The mask blocks them. That's why they work. Wearing them is the absolute least that people can do to uphold minimal civic responsibility. So that just about covers everything I wanted to say and everything I wish that people knew about vaccines. Unfortunately,
No,
most of
there's
us do
just
not have a
danger
background in
everywhere.
biochemistry, microbiology, immunology, or any other field relevant to the concept of vaccine development and administration. What this means is that we base our opinions on what we read. However, with no relevant background with which to assess the validity of what we read, most of us go not by facts, but by other things. We consider the conviction with which claims are expressed. We look at narratives that are presented and decide whether we like them or not, and how well they fit with some pre-existing bias or worldview. For many, this bias is just a vague distrust of anything regarded as an authority, be it a government, corporation,
Water
or
breathing
even
goes so
science
nice.
in general. It's not that these entities never do anything wrong, but people who blindly adhere to this bias are very easy to trick, as they tend to trust anyone who sells an anti-establishment narrative, regardless of its content or their qualifications and motives.
I
They
could
like
make this
how it
place my
sounds,
home.
so it must be true. Remember that the media we consume and the influencers we encounter do not have any responsibility to the truth. Just as detractors of Big Pharma complain that they are only in it for the money, so is a large portion of the media you come across. Some are in it for the clicks, as clicks mean bucks, and fear-mongering controversy brings clicks. Beyond the fact that people without any scientific or medical background are completely unequipped to deliver a reliable take on this and related issues, many people are being deliberately deceitful for financial gain, like Kaufman, like Wakefield. When they tell you to follow the money to Big Pharma, you need to follow the money to them too. This doesn't stop with clicks either. Anti-vaccine sentiment is just one facet of the anti-science movement, which is an enormous consumer trend that the alt health industry fosters and exploits to sell all-natural supplements, alternative treatments, and all kinds of goods and services. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry based on perpetuating chemophobia and baseless distrust of scientific principles that have given us the modern world many of us take for granted. Prolonged life
Where did I
expectancy,
get this shield? And this crossbow.
Again, this is a much larger topic that I intend to tackle from a few different angles in videos to come. So if you found this one to be informative, please like and subscribe, and be on the lookout for future debunks regarding quantum mysticism, the organic craze, and other such fascinating social defects that muddy public perception of science. In addition, I've just written a book about all of these topics and more. It's called Is This Wi-Fi Organic? A Guide to Spotting Misleading Science Online. If you're tired of sifting through mountains of contradictory information, I wrote this book to serve as a guide in navigating the digital cacophony that is the internet so that you don't get fooled by hoaxes and propaganda. If you're interested, check out the link below. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.
This place will do. Safe and easy stone. And I've gotten an attachment for that. You need to change the settings of the minimap later. So I still hate the minimap, but I can't bring myself not to use it because, I mean, come on. If you haven't noticed, the minimap is really useful. I was actually planning on building a dirt hut, but why not bring to life an old monument? Or not bring to life, but rather make use of something abandoned. Clearly no one uses anymore. This is a plains biome. Where are all the centaurs and stuff? Is it because I'm in normal difficulty? I think it'll just be a temporary shelter at best though. I quite enjoy making my own house. So I'll use this as a temporary base while I make my actual base. That's the game plan. Oh, nice. Just gonna make absolutely sure the place is well lit for now. beware, be skeptical. If there's miles inflated. What happened to all my sticks? The seat's so natural. But a wolf in sheep's clothing is more than a warning. Mama, black sheep, have any soul? No, sir, by the way, what the hell more? Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. Just a little more half an hour as I run into tricks. So could you? I don't know why I suddenly felt like singing that song. Tell me how you're sleeping easy, how you only thinking about yourself. Show me how you justify playing all your lies like second if you're listening. My words one day, you will pay, you will pay. Who's gonna come collect your debt? Aware, stalk your prey with criminal mentality. You feed into the people you depend on, infecting everyone with quite a problem. 3, 5, 4, 5, better run and hide. I smell the blood of a coward. Jack be lethal, Jack be slick. Jelly, dying in a filthy ditch. So could you tell me how you're sleeping easy, how you're only thinking about yourself? Show me how you justify telling all your lies like second nature. Listen to my words one day. You will pay, you will pay. Karma's gonna come collect your debt. I'll have to light this up later. You need fuel. I know where to find it. I guess I can't do that. I thought I could make a knife out of stone. I think I can use these candles. What's up with the iron? Why are they doing that? It's a slab. That'll work for now. I have wheat. I hope I do. Bread's a pretty good starter food. I believe so, at least. Normally, village have a lot of wheat. Supposed to spread their luck.
Is the search for the longest infinite chess game. To understand how we can obtain mate values beyond the finite numbers, we first need to gain some intuition for how
there's
the
some
game
wheat.
tree works. A game tree shows us all possible moves and outcomes originating from a given position. With every move, we descend
Caravan.
one step down the game tree into one of the many possible variations we can reach. If white has a winning strategy for forced checkmate, they will follow a path leading them to a win. Let's draw a tree, a finite chess position where white has mate in 3. We draw a node to represent the current position, and we'll label it 3 with a game value. If white has a winning strategy, they will always be able to make a move which decreases the game value by 1. Now it is mate in 2. If black is playing optimal, the value shouldn't change after their move. This pattern continues down to 0, which symbolizes checkmate. For simplification, I'm going to hide the white nodes, because as long as white plays perfectly, they will always reduce the clock by 1, so we won't need to worry about their branches. Now we can see, as long as both sides play perfectly, the game value should always decrease by 1 with each turn cycle. This is a very simple tree. In reality, black has many more options to choose from. Some
What
are
the
shorter
heck?
than others. Black's optimal strategy is to pick the branch with the highest number, because it gives more time until checkmate. But as long as white can force checkmate, they will always be able to force black down a path leading to 0. But what if we don't know the value of the node we're on? How would we calculate it? We'll start by looking at all the possible moves and figuring out their values. One move here results in immediate checkmate, or value 0. Another results in checkmate after 2 moves, and that's our best move. Now, to calculate the value of our mystery node, we add 1 to the largest value below. In this case, that's 1. So the value of our node is 2. The position is mate in 2. When we look at what positions are possible on the infinite board, though, a new approach is needed. Let's start at the bottom by studying a position we claim to be mate in omega, the first infinite ordinate. What's so special about a chess position that makes all finite numbers for the checkmate clock insufficient? White has a forced mate here, and it's black to move. We'll construct our tree to help us determine the game value. Remember, black's strategy is to find the branch with the highest value. If we move this rook left, by our next turn, we will be in checkmate, making that branch value 0. Let's keep looking. Focusing on
Perhaps
the
I'll
middle
start
row,
with
if we move
coal.
up 1,
Fuck.
checkmate will come in 2 moves. An improvement, but we could do a lot better. Move the rook up 8 squares for a checkmate in 9, or 32 squares for a checkmate in 33. And you see where this is going. There is an infinite number of moves we could make here, and there will always be another farther rook move that gives us a higher branch value. This is something new we haven't encountered yet. The numbers on these branches approach infinity. There is no one greatest number, so we can't calculate the value of our mystery node like before by adding 1 to the largest. The technically correct way of calculating a node's value is by taking the smallest ordinal greater than any value below. Omega is defined as the smallest ordinal greater than all the positive integers, which completes our tree. We have discovered a position only possible in infinite chess, where the game length is essentially unbounded. The wonder of mate in Omega is it allows Black to say,
Well, I know you're gonna win, but this time it's gonna take you 10 billion.
and then move the rook that far. White may be able to force a win, but Black is the one with the power controlling how long it will be. But why label it Omega? Omega is a transfinite ordinal after all. Why are we justified in using ordinals for the checkmate clock instead of, say, mate n or aleph null? Well, this position's game value would be inaccurate because the game length is still finite. Even though in our tree there are infinite branches of increasing length, every single one of them eventually ends with a 0. Black has to pick one. No matter how far Black moves the rook, White can slowly but steadily lead them to that doom of 0, the game ending after a huge but finite number of moves. While Omega is a type of infinite ordinal, it doesn't actually mean the game will last an infinite number of moves. Think of it like this. Imagine an infinite line of possible states the checkmate clock could be in. The limit or order type of this line would be Omega. When we say a position is mate in Omega, we don't mean the game will last an infinite number of moves. Rather, we mean there's an infinite number of possible checkmate clock states ahead of it in line, but we won't touch all of them on our way to checkmate. This specific move, when Black moves the rook to decide how much longer the game will last, we call an announcement. When Black makes this announcement, the clock state descends from Omega to a finite number, and play continues towards 0 from there. Using ordinals to represent the game value, at least we can see at any given point how many announcements Black has remaining, and in that sense get a feel for how much longer the game will last or what stage we're on. Clearly, in infinite chess, we've lost the ability to accurately represent the checkmate clock with finite numbers, because the length of the game can be unbounded. Does that mean we've completed our search then? We can have a game length of any number we desire, even exceeding the time in seconds until the heat death of the universe. We just have to move the rug that many spaces away. But this is unsatisfying. We've labeled the game value of this position as Omega, but Omega
They need
is
a
just
cave.
one ordinal, and the ordinals can get infinitely bigger. What would a position with game value of Omega plus 1, Omega times 2, or Omega to the Omega look like?
Need coal,
Black
need
receives
iron.
just one announcement to guarantee the game lasts another arbitrary number of moves. But what about a position where Black gets 1,000 announcements to prolong the game? That definitely feels a lot bigger than our little Omega. Black would have
And I need to
infinitely
find
more
a nice,
stalls.
snug, safe
More
spot
announcements gives Black more
for my
flexibility
starter
for
base.
segment of the game lasts, and infinitely more game-defining moments. And so, the realm of higher and higher ordinals.
This
is
chapel
where we
of
continue our
dubious
search.
origin is not the
Many of
most comfortable
positions I will
place to
show
stay.
today are from mathematician Joel Hankins and Professor Corey Evans' research. Their work on infinite chess is incredible. Links are in the description. We can easily reach Omega plus 1 by just giving Black a check before they need to make their announcement. On our tree, how do we confirm this is actually Omega plus 1? We again look at all the possible moves resulting values. We can blunder mate immediately, either up a little bit or a mate 8, or infinitely other options. But giving this check results in us having an Omega value position very similar to before. This time, we can't see what the largest value is. It's Omega, so we can simply add 1 again to get Omega plus 1.
I want to see what's in this
As
place.
well by just starting the
It's a
white
bit
king
far
farther
away, but
Black can give as many checks as they can until they're forced to make their announcement or get immediately mated. We can see that this new line is also approaching a limit. That limit is Omega
I should be able to make a backpack.
Omega times 2. This is a position where Black gets 2 separate announcements, each adding their own arbitrary number of moves to the total game length. Black to move. White's goal is to maneuver the knight to capture this pawn, checkmate following shortly after. The only piece Black can move in this situation is this rook,
which will be very
the
useful.
knight would unprotect the checkmate square, and all other pieces are either stuck or pinned. Black can't sacrifice the rook to free himself either, because no matter where he does, he then ends up swinging, forced to move the knight because it's the only piece that can move, exposing the checkmate square. For black's only option is to give stall
Or
check
do
or
I
delay.
move forward?
White can never hide from the checks because the pinned rooks create a wall limiting their king to the right quadrant. Black starts out by making their first announcement, which converts one of the omegas in the clock to a finite number.
Why
White
is it
advances
showing
the
up on
knight
my
towards the
recipes?
checkmate square. Black then gives a huge number of checks. Once the king catches up, black makes their second announcement, the clock now dropping to a finite number. White advances closer to the checkmate square, and black gives as many checks as possible until he no longer can outpoint whites with lead mates. In total, we get a positional value of omega times 2. We can even easily extend this to give black any number of announcements we want by just starting the white knight further away. The only points in the game when white gets to advance the knight towards the checkmate square are the moments right after black moves the rook further out, allowing us to remove before another massive wave of checks comes in. But what happens when we hit omega square? This is the first point in our search at which we've reached a new kind of announcement. If we expand our notation, we can see now that we have an arbitrary number of announcements, which number is determined by an announcement of itself. I will call this a Tier 2 announcement, where a Tier 1 announcement decides how many additional finite moves are added to game length. A Tier 2 announcement decides how many additional Tier 1 announcements are made. I introduce the Rook Tower. White will win once they advance this pawn to give checkmate. To do that, they need to maneuver a few pawns and bishops. This black pawn is only here to prevent black from self-stalemating. Black starts out by moving this rook arbitrarily high. The higher the better. This is the Tier 2 announcement, determining how many normal announcements we will get. The clock now drops to a number of omegas. Similar to before, how white could only ever move the knight after a massive wave of checks, here white can only push a single pawn
The wood set is
after
better
every massive
anyhow.
wave of checks.
I finally get into the first one. Well, that's good. Check. Check, 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 check. Well, better come out of the way.
Every pawn pushed gives an additional announcement for black, and because the number of total pawns pushed is controlled by black's first move, the total value we get out of this position is omega squared. We've noticed the behavior now where the number of omegas in the checkmate clock must always decrease, never increase, no matter the number of announcements. Game length will always remain finite but massive. Black will always eventually run out of announcements, white shortly after. Let's step it up to omega cubed, where a Tier 2 announcement allowed black to decide how many additional regular announcements they receive. An omega cubed position now gives black a Tier 3 announcement, which allows them to decide how many Tier 2 announcements they get. If this rook tower is equivalent to a Tier 2 announcement, we need an arbitrary number of them. We need infinite. Each of these towers has what we call a lock and key. The black pawns are the locks, and these white pawns are the keys. If whites can maneuver the bishops,
This place is pretty bountiful with minerals.
Activating the tower. Black,
It's very good, but
so low, will travel up an arbitrary distance, increasing the number of pawns white has to push in this segment. After all one rook tower have been pushed, white can make room to maneuver the next key pawn into the lock, activating the next rook tower, and the next, and so on down the line towards the king. The game ends with black firing the bishop.
I believe this structure over here is an abandoned farm.
Deciding how many rook towers white would need to
Oh
work
no.
through before they can
Is
win.
that a mine
The
shaft?
clock now drops to a number of omega
A
squares.
surface mine
White
shaft.
advances the pawn to break the
Wacky.
line, allowing the bishops to be maneuvered for the first pawn key to be inserted, activating the first rook tower.
Digs down.
Each activated tower requires black to expend one of their many Tier 2 announcements, which, like before, each of those determines how many regular announcements, or omegas, are added to the clock. And for every pawn white pushes, black is able to expend another regular announcement to deliver a massive wave of
Alright,
checks.
well,
in
I
the
was
left
hoping for
quadrant,
more food
desperately
resources,
trying to
but
stop white from making
whatever.
progress in the tower.
Plenty of
And white doesn't
cows,
know yet
chickens,
how
and
more
stuff
pawns they were pushed
I can
win this
import to
game.
my base later.
Eventually, the last rook tower is
And
activated,
you'll never
and
guess what
almost
I'm gonna be
inside,
making
white
my base
now
out of.
left. And after an incredibly massive amount of moves, checkmate is finally delivered. This game is unimaginably long.
I like these meadows. I think I'll climb up top of it and make my base there.
Would end up lasting over 1 million moves. That's how much they compound.
It's a nice
If I
hilly
haven't
area
blown your
that's
brain yet, wait till I show
on
you
the
Omega
surface,
to the
that's
fourth.
on top.
On Omega to the fourth
On a
game,
high
gives you
area.
a Tier 4 announcement, which in turn lets you decide how many Tier 3 announcements you want, which was already stupidly long itself. This is where things get insane. We can see familiar road towers like before, but with a little more than that. The lower quadrants have been lined with bishop cannons, increasing size. And on the left, gateway terminal wings. I racked my brain figuring out how this one works, so let's break it down. We'll start in the throne room, where the kings are locked face to face. Everything in here is trapped. If white can get a bishop on this diagonal, it will be immediate checkmate. If black can get a bishop on this diagonal, it will be checkmate after 3 moves. The distinction in timing will be important. Ignoring the bishop cannons temporarily, white's goal remains the same. Make progress in the rook towers, advancing all the pawns, activating tower after tower, eventually reaching the final rook tower, releasing the bishop, and circling around to deliver checkmate. The main difference here are the bishop cannons. Previously, with every pawn push white made, black was able to deliver an arbitrary amount of checks, equivalent to an omega amount of delay. But this time, for every pawn white pushes, black will be able to fire a bishop cannon, which is equivalent to omega squared amount of delay, creating countless more threats white will have to respond to before they'll have another chance to push a pawn. Like before, the game starts off with black firing his bishop
Should be monsters of the wazoo.
Except here, this
Maybe I just can't
represents
see them in
tier
the
4
darkness,
and each rook tower is now a tier 3
and
announcement.
they won't come
We'll
out
understand why that is in
for
a
reasons that
moment. The clock now drops
I can
to a
probably
combination
guess.
of omega cubes and lesser. White captures the bishop. Now black chooses their first cannon to fire. The bigger, the better. Choosing a cannon expends a tier 2 announcement. Black fires the first bishop out and lines it up against an opening into one of the gateway terminals. As usual,
Oh,
the
this is a
longer
very
the
big
better.
vein.
The fuse of
Very
the cube
nice,
has
very
been lit,
nice.
and this is white's chance to push a pawn for a very long time. Now black enters the gateway terminal, threatening to break through one of the gateway's doors. Here's what happens if white ignores it. They go on their merry way, pushing pawns to make progress. Black breaks through the door, escapes into the open, and finds his way into the king's chamber to checkmate white. How does white prevent this? Each terminal wing has a bishop
I'm happy
guard
with this.
post. When black threatens the
This
door,
is a good enough
the guard
starting
responds.
set.
Now, if black still
I just
tries
need a
to
bit
break
more
through, the guard
wood.
will follow closely behind and just barely beat black to checkmate. This
And
is
then
why
I'll
it's
gather
important
the
to
materials
teach
for
black
building
3
my
extra moves
actual
to checkmate
base.
in the throne room. Okay, so black can
And
break
then all
through
that's
the door,
left is
but
finding
that
the
doesn't mean
position
he can't
and
threaten
getting to building.
So black threatens to break through every single door in the gateway, each threat requiring a response from the corresponding guard. On the very final door, black can go far as to capture the door, but he can't leave that spot or the guard will beat him to checkmate again. This bishop is no longer of use. So black fires the next bishop out of the same cannon.
We
and
ignored
lines it
that
up to a
first
new
death with
gateway
the
terminal
alligator,
with
okay?
1,000
That never
gates.
happened.
Now, you might think that white has another opportunity to push a pawn here, but here's the issue. You see, the firing of that last bishop
Not
revealed
worth
a
the
discovered
fir
pawn.
forest.
If black advances that pawn, he will be able to
Fir
break through the
is
pawn barrier,
a very
releasing
nice
the
material.
pawn towards the kings. Because of that threat, white must reply against this bishop firing
I'll go
by
use it
advancing
as
the
my source of
corresponding
wood.
defender. When black captures now, the walls remain tight. So black has fired a second bishop out of the cannon, and white still hasn't had time to push another pawn.
First I
That
return
bishop
home.
goes to threaten 1,000 gateway doors until it's reached the end, and another bishop is fired, which opens another discovered pawn, forcing white to seal the wall again. This process continues for every single bishop black has in cannon. The only bishop firing that didn't reveal a pawn was that first bishop. Eventually, the final bishop will run out of gateway doors to threat, and the cannon will be empty. Well, not completely empty, but these bishops require an extra move to get out, so black isn't interested in using those. The cannon is considered empty, and now black must choose a new cannon and fire the first bishop out. And the first bishop launched is the one that doesn't reveal a discovered pawn, which finally allows white time to push another pawn. This progress continues. For every single move of progress white makes in the towers, black fires a cannon of arbitrary size, and each of those bishops make an arbitrary amount of threads in the gateway terminals. The original bishop moving up was the tier 4 announcement. Each rook tower is a tier 3 announcement. Each pawn movement in the rook towers allows the activating of a bishop cannon tier 2 announcement, and each bishop fired from that cannon is a tier 1 announcement, deciding how many gateway door threads it will make. We fast forward time to after the last rook tower has been activated, and the final few pawns are pushed. White is now close enough to checkmate, where they can ignore black's threats of breaking through the doors, race to the king chamber, and win just in time. All in all, white wins this position with a game value of omega to the 4th.
Sure. The fuck is a terrapin?
Omega to the 4th. If I told you that omega to the 4th was the longest possible infinite chess game, I would be lying, because we can even go bigger, a lot bigger. Now, while I don't actually have an example for it, we do know how we can make longer positions. We know this thanks to Matthew Bolin. Let's take a look at how his proof works. We construct a position such that black is in local Zugzwang. If outside of this position runs out of moves, he will be forced to capture this pawn, mating himself shortly after. Because of this, black will try everything in their power to find an infinite source of moves outside of this court. Now, we initiate the position. Because black doesn't want to move their king and sell their bishop, they're forced to move this bishop, which is their only free piece. But there's no protected square to move to. No matter where it moves, white will capture, reducing black's moves to none, and checkmate happening shortly after.
Oh wait, is my shield mod not working?
Next, we add a node, still retaining this bishop as black's only other free piece. What this does is it gives black a single square to move to.
What's up with the shield being normal?
After capture, black's goal becomes to free this bishop. Because he's able to get it into the open, white will never be able to hunt it down on an infinite way, meaning black will never be forced to move his king. To prevent this, white works to open the eyes of this bishop. All of a sudden, we find ourselves in a very similar position to before. Black has no good spot to move, because white will just capture, putting him in Zugzwang again. But with this node, we have increased the length of the game from mate in 5 to mate in 23. Now what we can do is add another node, Reflect, giving black an additional protected square to move to after the first node, which would increase the game length to 38. Okay, but how can we use this to construct high ordinal value positions? Let's try to recreate the most basic mate in omega position. Black's first move needs to be the announcement, and we'll need to give them infinitely many choices. If we place infinitely many moves on this diagonal, it gives black infinitely many protected squares to choose from. For now, moving to any one of them results in a game length of 23. The first will untouched, but for the second one, we'll branch it to one more node, making that choice a length of 38. And for the third node, we'll branch 2 more nodes, making sure it doesn't intersect with any of our previous diagonals, making that choice last 53 moves. The fourth node will branch 3 nodes, making that choice a length of 68, and so on infinitely. Each subsequent choice yields a longer and longer game, but if it's still finite, we are in the exact same situation as we were in the original mate and omega game, where the values on our branches approach infinity. Because of this position is also mate and omega. While it understandably might be a little more complex, we could continue this method to make even longer positions. If we wanted to transform this into omega squared, what we would do
Why is there no cooldown?
Rotate it and stretch it out a bit, sticking it as the first choice in this.
Is that not a thing anymore?
Now, we make the second choice have a branch length of omega times 2, the next choice length omega times 3.
Am I using an outdated, or is this a new version of
omega squared?
I'll have to check later. I can't be bothered to do that right now.
How large a game we can construct. With infinite space to work with, we will always be able to keep stretching to fit in larger and larger announcements. Now we're cooking. But exactly how far can this take us? As we climb to higher and higher tiered announcements, it becomes clear that there's a limit to these. Omega to the omega. An announcement on a whole new level. The first announcement in omega to the omega position would be to decide the tier of your next highest announcement. But we can go bigger. Omega to the omega to the omega. Omega to the power of infinite omegas is equal to epsilon 0. The first announcement in epsilon 0 position would be to decide how tall this tower of omegas is. But we can go bigger. Epsilon 0 to the power of omega. Epsilon 0 to the power of epsilon 0. Epsilon 0 to the power of infinite epsilon zeros gives us epsilon 1. We can repeat this to give us the next and next index of epsilon. Eventually, we reach epsilon of omega to the omega. Epsilon of epsilon 0. Epsilon of epsilon of epsilon of epsilon infinitely is equal to the Greek letter zeta 0. Zeta 0 to the power of infinite zeta zeros yields epsilon of zeta 0 plus 1. Increasing the number of epsilons above that infinitely yields zeta 1. Repeating, you can get the next and next index of zeta. Eventually, we reach the next Greek letter, eta, which is also the third index of the Veblen hierarchy, phi of 3. Continuing this, we reach the limit of the Greek letters, phi of omega, but the Veblen hierarchy takes us further, phi of epsilon 0, phi of zeta 0, phi of 1. Infinitely nesting the Veblen function within itself yields the Fefferman shoot ordinal. But where there's an index, we can keep increasing. We enter the multivariable Veblen hierarchy. Increasing the variable count, we reach the Ackermann ordinal. The supremum of infinitely many variables is the small Veblen ordinal. And we can keep going, taking limits, creating new notation, and repeating what we've done before, forever. And all of these we can construct an infinite chess position out of. But there is one ordinal that is so big, no amount of repeating and taking limits will ever get us there. This ordinal is omega 1, the first uncountable ordinal. We will never construct an infinite chess position that is mate in omega 1. It is too big. It makes sense. Omega 1, by definition, is the set of all countable ordinals, which size itself is uncountable. To give black an announcement as large as omega 1 would mean to give black uncountably many choices. But at any given point, we only ever have countably many legal moves. It is infinite, but it's not uncountably infinite. That is a bigger infinity. For this reason, omega 1 is the upper bound for all things infinite chess. Maybe at its grandest scale, infinite chess is a game for the gods. These game lengths are just too long for our mere mortal selves. but that doesn't mean we can't try, or at least imagine what it would be like. We may not be able to realistically play positions with transmitted game values, but I've also never seen one come across in competitive gameplay. I have many more plans for this game, just one of them being Infinite Generation, so we can bring to life many of the positions from today. I'm also planning on making devlog soon, so you guys can see some of the problem solving that goes on behind the scenes. And until I can make an in-game board editor, I actually have a spreadsheet editor you guys can use right
Time
now.
to collect dirt.
It's as simple as copying and pasting. Come join the Discord server to share what you've made. I've already added a few variants designed by members of the community. A massive thank you to all my supporting patrons, with special thanks to Andreas, and a huge thanks to all the researchers.
Honestly, just let all these 3 spoons I crafted disappear.
Until next time.
That was that nice. What? Oh, cool. Why do I have mining fatigue? I'd really rather not have mining fatigue. Yeah, if I collect seeds. This should be enough for what I'm planning on making. I'll have to remind myself to make another one soon. Honestly, this big clearing seems pretty nice too. It's right next to a mine shaft too. Let's just focus on finding a perfect spot first. There's no need to rush things. Carrots. Or just carrot. Carrots. It's not a bad spot, but I don't know, the spike doesn't jive with me. I think I'll make my house near the mine shaft. It's forest, nice and sleek. I jive with it. That's bad. Oh my. It is after me. You're all probably dying to know what I have in mind for my starting base. It looks big on the map, but it really isn't, huh? I like the feel of this place. I'll build it here. Did a bit better. Jesus Christ, I got jump scared by a fucking turtle.
Asher on the right. You ready? This guy better have some fucking answers for us. Go, 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 go. Surprise, surprise, mother... No fucking way. It's a lot, George. It's a lot. It's more than you'd expect, right? And when you think about it, 1 month is most of the year. You're gonna be okay. We've been in New York City
It's
in
a 12th of a year.
2024 for 1 hour, and we've seen that 47 times. How's that possible? We get it. Come on, let's go find a U.S. history book. I'm just saying, it's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, who could have stolen our time travel device? Okay, what are these lights? And why is it brighter than outside? Yeah, what are these? Like, how in the world? Where do they go? I don't know, I just hit this thing over here. If I do it again, will it... Oh! Hell no! Are you Holy fucking shit! I just tapped this and they turn on? Why can't my wife do that? Oh, this would have been so fucking helpful. Hey, can you stop messing with the lights, please? Can you start fucking bowing to me or just respond in proportion to what in the world is going on with these sky candles right now? Yeah, George, come on. Let's go get a book. Okay, hurry up, hurry up. Okay, I got one. Read about me, read about me. Okay, table of contents. Civil War. Isn't it funny how I united the states and you literally divided them? Okay, what comes after? Like, you divide people in a way that can be drawn on a map. Reconstruction, Gilded Age, Progressive Era, World War I. Oh my God. Roaring 20s. Whoa, women got the right to vote in 1920. I bet so many chicks made out that night. The Great Depression and the New Deal.
What?
World War II. Oh my God.
What's the
How
correlation?
was that my fault? Before you, no world wars. You come along, and we get two. Connect the dots. Cold War. The space race? No way. Are you... People have walked on the moon. The moon? Because Jesus only walked on water, which is far less impressive. Do we have a new guy? The first person to ever walk on the moon was an American named Neil Armstrong. Neil the Redeemer. Yeah, that sounds right. Nixon, Watergate, and Carter. The age of terrorism. Oh my God, there's so much. Go back to the founding father stuff. Oh, here we go. Ooh, what's this? Thomas Jefferson controversy. Did they find out what he did to Franklin when he was drunk? Yo, that guy is out of it. It says in 1998, scientists conducted DNA analysis. DNA. That sounds sexual. Is it sexual? I highly doubt it. It's this thing in your cells that basically determines physical traits and characteristics. Oh, so basically what I said. Keep reading. Okay. Scientists conducted DNA analysis that strongly suggests that Thomas Jefferson fathered multiple children with one of his slaves, Sally Hemings. Oh, shit! Oh! Yes! Yeah! Oh! Yo! Jefferson was banging his slave! Oh my God! And then he enslaved the children! What a fucking asshole! This is the greatest day of my life! You guys have no idea how many founding fathers owe me $20. Yo, Black History Month is off to the best start! Woo! Oh! Holy shit. Wow. You think you know a guy? Okay, George, as much as I want to keep reading, we gotta figure out, like, how we're gonna live. How do we get food? Where are we gonna sleep? I think we need to get jobs. Well, there's probably a farm around here somewhere. No, George, we can't assume it's the same as before. Excuse me? How do people go about getting a job nowadays?
There should be a
Online.
day counter in the F3 menu. I'm really interested in learning
And
about it.
where is that? The computer. Computer. Keep going. Computer, website, URL, digital, ones and zeros. Electricity. Oh, like that kite thing. So we'll just go to the kite store. No, George. Okay. What
I
would
can't
you
find
tell
it.
someone from like the 1800s, hypothetically, if they asked you how to get a job in 2024? What would you say? Well, if they didn't want to use the internet, I'd say it's New York. Walk into places, see if they're hiring. That might be our best bet. Let's go get a job, because I need to eat. Let's go. I'd also tell them to be careful. Why? Because 2024 is an election year. And weird things tend to happen during election years.
There's an ongoing plot going on in these skits, what the heck?
Unlock a world of rewards with
The most realistic 100 days in my 100 day video. 200 days please. You know this is probably better than most 100 day 100 days vid. Well, this escalated quickly.
Okay, you all really loved my last 100 days Minecraft video, so today I'm going to survive 100 days in the brand new 1.19 update. It's day 1 and I punched a tree. But this wasn't enough, so I decided to take down every single tree in my entire Minecraft world and use all the materials to build a massive tree in the center of my world. It was now day 2, and it was time to go mining. I found this giant cave, which led me to the brand new Deep Dark biome, and this is where things got scary. I was not ready to take on the Warden, a brand new mob that can sniff you out and kill you almost instantly. I only had a few totems and some Protection 700 Neverite armor. I was not ready to take on the Warden, but I decided to risk it all for the content. I slowly walked into the ancient city, trying to not make a noise that could summon the Warden, but then all of a sudden, well, this creeper just ruined my stealth mission, and now I had to fight one of the hardest mobs in the entire game. Time was running out, and the Warden was coming, and I was about to lose my 100 days in Minecraft video. But luckily, I survived that encounter, and I went on to get plenty of loot from the underground. It's day 20, and I wanted to start a massive project on this world. I wanted to destroy 30 million blocks, just like these videos on YouTube. After 10 days of non-stop mining, I was able to dig out this massive hole. Now it is day 31, and I had a lot of gold from this massive mining project. So I invested all the gold in the stock market and became the richest man on my Minecraft world. Now that I was a super wealthy billionaire, I founded my own private space agency and prepared for my next massive project. I was going to mine everything in the entire universe and use all the resources to build a really cool house. So I did that. But why stop there? I could travel the multiverse, collecting every single block that ever existed or ever will exist. I could use these mobs called allays to collect items across an infinite number of dimensions using all these portals which I constructed over the past 69 days. I could have everything I ever wanted, and it would only take me about 30 days of playtime. But as I stood there, surrounded by all the things I had collected over the last 99 days, I realized there was one thing I was missing. Oh, I forgot to defeat the Ender Dragon. I was meant to do that. I know, I had 100 days to do that, but I forgot. We're going to need to speedrun Minecraft right now. And thus, in order to beat the game before the 100 days challenge was over, I needed to beat the world record Minecraft speedrun. And this didn't go well. I kept dying to blazes in the Nether. There was no way I was going to beat the game for 100 days in hardcore Minecraft. But just before I was about to give up,
I found an end portal, and it was already open. I went inside, and I saw the Warden from day 2, fighting the Ender Dragon for me. It was the Warden who saw that I was struggling, and decided to beat the game for me. I watched from a distance as the Warden defeated the dragon, and saved my 100 Days in Minecraft challenge. And that was 100 Days in Minecraft 1.19. Make sure to subscribe to see more legit content like this, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Does the stress of holding down the left mouse button ever get to you? This is quite beautiful if I do say so myself. That's interesting.
say you want to become Pope, head of the Catholic Church, and shepherd to over 1 billion faithful. What requirements must you have for this lofty position? First, be a Catholic, and second, be a man. Which seems a little thin, and while it's technically possible for a regular Sunday Catholic to become Pope, the last time this happened was essentially never, because becoming Pope isn't like becoming president. You can't just run for office. Selecting the Pope is an inside job, and the men who do it are the cardinals, and while in theory they can select any Catholic man to become Pope, in practice they prefer to elevate one of their own. The last time a non-cardinal became Pope was more than 600 years ago, so while it isn't an official requirement, it's an unofficial official requirement. Thus, in order to become Pope, you'll first need to be a cardinal, and to do that, you need to start climbing the Catholic corporate ladder. Step 1. Become a priest. Unlike some churches, where you can just fill out a form online and poof, ordained, the Catholic Church treats becoming a priest as a real training profession. You're going to require a lot of education, usually a college degree in Catholic philosophy and then a master's in divinity. In addition to your educational qualifications, you must also be a man, unmarried, and willing to remain celibate. If you meet these requirements and have been working with the church, then you can be officially ordained as a priest, which basically means you get to run a Catholic church or work with another priest who does. But you want to move onward, and to do that, you need to take the job of the man who just made you a priest. Step 2. Become a bishop. Bishops are a much more select group. While there are about 400,000 Catholic priests worldwide, there are only about 5,000 bishops. While priests get churches, bishops get cathedrals, from which they oversee a number of local churches. To advance your career, you must wait for a bishop in your area to be forced into retirement at age 75, or die sooner than that, freeing up space for you. But you can't just apply, because there's already a secret list of potential bishops that's updated every 3 years based on who the current bishops in your area think would make a good replacement for one of their own. To be on that list, in addition to the obvious requirement of being a pious person, you should also be at least 35 years old, have been a priest for at least 5 years, and have a doctorate in theology or equivalent. Assuming you're all these things, your name may or may not be on the secret list. Local bishops then give that list to the Pope's ambassador for your country, known as the Apostolic Nuncio. The Nuncio picks 3 priests from the list, does in-depth research on them, conducts interviews, and selects the one he thinks is best. But it's not over, because the Nuncio sends his report to Vatican City and the Congress of Bishops who work there, reviewing potential appointments from around the world. If the Congress of Bishops doesn't like any of the 3 candidates, they can tell the Nuncio to start over, returning to the list, picking another 3 candidates, doing more research, more interviews, and sending off the results. When the Congress of Bishops is happy with one of the Nuncio's candidates, that name is given to the Pope, who can reject the candidate and start the whole process over. It shouldn't be a surprise that from vacancy to a bishop's replacement can take months, and on occasion years. But assuming a bishop in your area retired or died at the right time, and you were on the secret list of good priests, and the Nuncio picked you, and you made it through his interview, and the Congress of Bishops approved you, and the Pope didn't veto you, poof, now you're a bishop. But you're still not on top. The penultimate promotion is step number 3, become a cardinal. Despite the fancy name and snazzy red outfits to match, cardinals are not the bosses of bishops. They are bishops, just with an additional title and additional responsibilities, the most notable of which is electing the new pope. The only way to become a cardinal is to get the current pope to appoint you as one, and of the 5,000 bishops, only about 200 are ever cardinals. But let's say your ambition doesn't go unnoticed by the pope and he makes you a cardinal. Now it's time to play the waiting game for his death or retirement, and with popes, death is vastly more likely. When either happens, the cardinals up to the age of 80 are brought to Vatican City, where they are isolated from the outside world, presumably by taking away their cell phones and tablets and carrier pigeons. Once sequestered, the election of a new pope can begin. These elections are never exactly the same because the ex-pope leaves instructions on how he wants his replacements to be picked, but in general it works like this. 4 times a day, the cardinals go to the Sistine Chapel to vote, and to become pope, one of them must get a 2/3 majority. There's a big dose of mustn't be too hasty here, as the cardinals don't just raise their hands or use a modern preferential voting system, but instead write down one name on a piece of paper, stand before the altar, and say a long Latin phrase before officially casting the ballot. Once all the cardinals have done this, the votes are counted and then burned. This is why TV news stations covering the election of pope use super modern HD live streaming cameras to look at a chimney. If the smoke is black, no new pope. The high victory threshold and tediously slow voting process is why it takes so long to elect a pope. It's usually at least 2 weeks of voting, 4 times a day, 6 days a week, with 1 day a week reserved for prayer, but the record length is 3 years. Assuming you eventually win the support of your fellow cardinals, you have one final thing to do before becoming pope. Pick yourself a new name. There's no formal rule, and you can name yourself anything you like, but it's tradition to take the name of a previous pope. Upon the acceptance of your new name, the final ballots are burned clean to make the smoke turn white and announce to the world that a new pope has been selected. So that's the career path. Be born into the right half of the population, become one of 1 billion Catholics, then one of 400,000 priests, then one of 5,000 bishops, then one of 200 cardinals, wait for the current pope to die or retire, and convince 2/3 of your fellow cardinals to select you as the one, the only pope.
like there's nothing new that's interesting to watch.
This video is about me trying to build a wizard tower from scratch, and honestly, I impressed myself, bro. I was not confident going in, but I'm starting to feel better at building. We're doing this all from scratch, so my first idea was to speedrun the game, that way I get an Elytra, because I feel like it'd be really cool to build this in a Mushroom Island. And if you don't know, Mushroom Islands
Just
are
casually
super rare, so I was definitely not going to do this
new Minecraft
challenge,
world.
building
Amazing.
project, whatever you want to call it, without an Elytra. After I get some iron from a shipwreck and food, I decided it's time to go down and try to find a lava lake so we can enter the nether. Normal speedrun stuff, but let me tell you, in 120, speedrunning is just so hard. I ran around for 3 to 5 minutes before I found a lava lake underground, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm used to entering the nether in like 2 minutes, so this felt so slow. I did get a diamond pick though, which is really nice because it means we can double travel when we get to the nether. And I realized this isn't a normal speedrunning video that I would make. I do a lot of speedrunning, but I've been trying to learn some building stuff, which is the whole point of these kind of videos. And I think it's been really fun. So once I make it to the bastion, I spot a gold block, which is really nice because I can make myself a bit of gold armor. The tricky part with bastions and newer versions are piglin brutes, so I played more carefully than I normally would. It didn't take too much longer. But the really cool thing about this bastion was getting over a stack of pearls. Oh my gosh, these piglins are fantastic. Over a stack of pearls from a bastion is insane for this version. It was really nice because I could make my way to the fortress. But I knew I'd have to make my portal early because we only have 10 obsidian and I'm going to be doing a technique called double travel. So I have to have a lot of time to remine this entire nether portal. We're going to be basically putting it at a closer spot to the stronghold as soon as we do some fancy math and stuff. That's what this is right now. In modern day speedrunning, you'll use a calculator like pretty much every top runner. We'll use a calculator to take these eye measurements and then predict exactly where the stronghold's going to be. But since it's the newer version, I figured I'd challenge myself and try to do all of the math and calculating in my head. So I didn't use a calculator for this, just a specific setup, my chunk borders, the F3 screen. And while it's going to be less accurate than using a calculator because I can't do F3 plus C, it's still pretty dang accurate. And the coolest thing is I feel amazing when I do it. I'm predicting where the stronghold's going to be without any outside tool. It just... oh my gosh. So I mine the entire portal and go into the nether where my predictions say I should go. The numbers were actually really high, which isn't impossible, it's just super unlikely, so I was a bit nervous I did my math wrong. But I placed down the obsidian, and it turns out we were pretty freaking close. The unfortunate thing is I redid some measurements here to see how far away it was, and literally I just read the numbers wrong. I was looking at the angle change between two eyes, and it was actually like 6 or 7 degrees of angle change, which is great. But I confused myself and thought it was 1 degree of angle change, so I ended up running like hundreds of blocks past the stronghold and just getting so confused because my math was literally like 50 blocks off of the stronghold. But here's what I mean. I just finished the video. This is my portal. This is where my prediction of the stronghold is. The stronghold is right here, but you know what I did? I went to the surface and was like, oh, it's 1,000 blocks this way, and ran off all the way over there. So I wasn't feeling super great, but I did hit the stronghold and looted a library for the paper. This is going to be super important in a second. The reason I got the paper is because we're going to go to the outer end islands, hopefully get a rocket, and that way we have a couple firework rockets to get home. I got kind of lucky. There was a ship relatively close by, which was really good because I only had 9 rockets, so I got out of there as soon as I had the Elytra. Now, I wasn't sure how long it would take to find a mushroom island, so I figured I'd do some enchanting to try and get a looting 3 book. What? What is this? How is this just here? I cannot believe my spawn had a woodland mansion next to it. But it was actually kind of nice because I'm planning to build out of dark oak, and this had a ton of it. So I made sure to get some dark oak and a totem, which was kind of cool. I'm gonna die, aren't I? I mean, I have a totem now, so we're chilling. But wow. My old tangent, but the Vex here, this is the most annoying experience I've had with Vex. I was like 100 blocks away from that mansion, and these dudes just kept following me. But now, for the moment we've all been waiting for, which actually took a lot of extra work off camera, I got Unbreaking 3 on my Elytra. So I finally felt safe to fly around, and I flew straight into an ice spikes biome, one of the rarest biomes to exist. And I know you can only get mushroom islands in an ocean, so I decided to fly towards this cold ocean, which I figure probably turns into a deep ocean, and it pays off. Oh my gosh, there's no... Yes! Oh my gosh, there's no way it's this tiny! Bro, wait, this is actually perfect at being this tiny.
Dude, this makes me so happy. I feel like this run was going so bad.
Are there even any mushrooms here? There's one mushroom.
I think Mark is a good name. Mark the Mushroom. Okay, oh, now I actually need to build, don't I?
I still don't consider myself a builder, and I was kind of nervous to start, but I figured I'd get a good aerial view to try and figure out how big I want to make this tower. I took stock of my resources, which wasn't that much, but I knew I wanted to build like a rock pillar structure to put like the magician house on top of, which means I need a lot of deep slate. And I'm working on another video right now that led me to this idea, which I think is the coolest way to gather deep slate.
Okay. Oh my gosh, it works!
This is how I'm getting my deep slate, bro. Oh my gosh, wait, I didn't have my elytra on. This is a TNT duper design that doesn't need coral fans or slime, the two things that make TNT dupers hard to do. I wasn't sure how much faster this was going to be than mining, so I came up with a strat to like set off one TNT, and then while I'm collecting the blocks from that, set off the next one, do a bit of water bucket clutching. It's a little bit risky, but pretty cool.
I'm cutting it so close!
Okay, that was too close. I would get 40 plus deep slate from every TNT explosion. It was insane. Huge shout out to Big Booty. Sorry, Big Booty 17 for designing this TNT thing. It's like slightly modified, but
Bro, it's so cool.
it took about 5 minutes to get all of this, and if you've ever mined deep slate, this is amazing. Right before I left, I found a geode, which I figured would probably be good for something magical because it has a lot of good purple.
Oh gosh.
Oh, that's not right. Whoa, did you hear that? Okay, we have finally started building. And you could probably make a good argument that I'm just procrastinating building because I'm uncomfortable with it. But you know what? It was so much fun, and I do think it's worth it in the long run to just get all these tools. Like killing the Ender Dragon gets you 60 or 70 levels. So nice for getting full enchanted tools. Plus all of the books that you get from the library, you have an instant level 30 enchanting set. This is probably what I'll do if I keep doing build videos like this. I'll speedrun first to get the tools, and then I'll make the build. Oh, I totally forgot to do this. Lower FOV, we're building. I can't express how useful lowering the FOV is for me. When I speedrun, I have maximum FOV. I'm in Quake Pro because I want to be gathering all the info about the surrounding area. I need to know what's going on. But for building, it puts me in such a good mood to lower it and really focus on the blocks. All I've done so far is outline a circle of how big I want to make the tower. I actually build it a little bit too big, but figure I should probably get some stone as well. I'm not going off of any reference this time, other than what I've seen in the past, but I figure stone is probably going to be useful. I know what I did wrong. So that's the downside of using the TNT duper. But I built it again. It didn't take much time at all. You could probably figure out how to build it by watching this video, honestly. And a few minutes later, I had all the stone I thought I'd need. For being a building video, I have not talked much about building, but the basic idea here is to outline a circle and then sort of make a cone slightly slanting inwards. So I made a quick little build palette because I think gradients are a huge thing to making builds look better in Minecraft. So my idea is we make the bottom of the cone a darker color, and then as it gets towards the top, it makes it lighter. For the most part, I'm spamming blocks, hoping to follow a general shape. I've had a bit of practice doing this in the past with some ice towers I did on an SMP a couple of years ago.
If I do/kill entities, is that gonna kill me
that's
too?
actually sick, bro! What? Okay, I did not think I was doing that good of a job. I'm being real.
I guess I'll
now
just
that
let
the
them
base was getting
naturally
finished, I swapped out a couple blocks to be slightly lighter, built a little bit of scaffolding, and continued building. Maybe this looks repetitive in the video, but it felt really nice to just spam blocks. How's it looking? It might be tapering slightly too quick. But other than that, I think it's good. I just need some more resources. One thing I've noticed doing more building is it is very nice to have more resources than you need. I feel it really lets me be wild with placing my blocks. I feel like I don't have to worry about conserving resources because I have so many, which is one of the reasons why I like this TNT duper so much. Yeah, I guess this is what they do in real life, right? They use dynamite in mines and stuff. Like they're using pickaxes. Interesting. Watch this spider. Boom. Band of Arthropods 5.
Modern technology is
No,
the
at
world's
5.
greatest.
Dude, I destroy spiders. Silverfish, they don't stand a chance against me. If you're curious why I'm putting the dirt underneath the TNT duper, it's just to elevate the TNT a little bit more so that I'm mining
more of the walls as well instead of making a straight hole downwards. Back to the building, I had used my 2 darkest colors of Deep Slate, and I was transitioning to the Cobbled and Tough, which I also got from the TNT Deeper. How does it look? Ooh, I like that. I like that. The main thing I wanted to change was how quickly it was tapering, so I really focused on making taller pillars for this last section of building, until finally I flattened it off when I thought it was high enough. Alright, that might be high enough. Let's go have a look over here. Honestly, it's a little too narrow, I think.
So there's
And
no
while I could
delay
have made it
to
slightly
that
wider
name,
and taller, which
they
might have looked better, I was
do
pretty
the
much
thing
out of
with the
Tough and
damage
didn't
block
want to
rather than-
rebuild. Now we're on to the actual house part
I don't
of the
know, I
Wizard
think I
Tower,
might
so I
like-
planted
I
some
might
more
like
dark
that
oak and got
change.
oak from the surrounding forest. I feel like for a long time, the stuff I built was out of the most convenient things to get, like oak planks, and I didn't use oak logs or stripped oak logs much because it was just a pain to get them all. But I think if you want a good build, you need a lot of good material. So I've started to try and build with more logs, like more stripped stuff, because it's like you expect to be able to make something really cool and that you're proud of out of just oak planks. Maybe, but I think for me and right now, the answer is no. By this point in the recording, I had honestly accumulated a lot of blocks. My scaffolding to the top was getting higher and higher, which also felt cool. To start off the house, I wanted to put it on 2 really long logs. For some reason, it feels more structural that way instead of plopping the entire house on a stone blob. I also added some diagonal support-looking structures, because if you're putting a house on top of a really thin spire, you're probably going to need some support, right? Once those 2 things were in place, I added a giant platform of planks, which right now is the most ugly-looking thing on the entire build. But overall, I think we're going in a really good direction. And just, like, look at this view. I can't believe I built this. Now,
You've got
for
a
the
nice
cottage
flat
itself,
area.
that's what I guess
So
I'll
what
call
exactly
it,
am
a
I
cottage on top
building?
of this little platform.
Why did I
didn't
do
want to
all
make
this
it just square. I think
seemingly
having
worthless
flat walls
terraforming?
is a bad move for building,
Well-
so I tried to put these support pillars at slightly different depths. And then if you couldn't tell, I really enjoy the mechanics of placing blocks fast, and at least trying to do it fast and efficiently, so I'm using my butterfly clicking, even though maybe I mess up kind of a lot, and maybe it's slower because you're doing it in short bursts rather than a long continuous placement. Now, moving on to the back side of the building, or at least this is what I'm going to call the back, I figured it'd be good to not build a straight up wall, so I added a slight slant to it, which I think I regret in the end, but I did like the move of putting regular oak logs as a separating thing. I was pretty uncertain what to do with the giant plain oak platform originally, but I added a bunch of these regular oak log outshoots. I'm really lost for words here, and I think they look pretty good. That's looking kind of sick, bro. What? How am I doing this? I started making the walls slightly taller because I think a mistake that I've made in the past is making my walls too short, so I made sure to give ample headroom here. Ample. That's such a good word. Makes you feel fancy. Ample. Also, directly below me, you'll see what kind of looks like